Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for Campus to Career Computer Science. My name is Catherine Alea, and I'm the Assistant Director of Career Development here at Concordia University. The purpose of today's webinar is to kind of dive into these three individuals here and just get a better understanding of how they broke into that industry, the computer science industry. Um, they're going to give us a little bit of insights into how to accomplish this today in like 2026. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to them so that they can introduce themselves. Timothy, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I'm Timothy Maggs. I am an IT support technician slash junior developer at Concordia here. And I've been in the industry for just over a year because I graduated in spring 25. So I've been working in the IT department here ever since.
Great. Juan, I can pass it over to you.
Yeah, hi. My name is Juan Carpintero. I am a software engineer by trade. I went to school for software engineering. I graduated in 2017, actually 16. But I have went through the track of quality assurance. So I have worked in quality assurance for about ever since. My first job was that, and I just continue to accelerate in it. And yeah, I am a senior quality assurance engineer working for Johnson Controls at the moment in New York City.
Awesome. Thanks. Jordan, what about you? Oh, sorry, Jordan, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Hey, my name is Jordan Altrak. I work at CPS Energy as a middleware software engineer, which is a resource company. And I have been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now since I graduated from Concordia in 22.
Awesome. Great. So now that you've all introduced yourselves, I thought we could talk a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like in your current role. So, Juan, can you briefly describe your role and maybe what a typical day looks like for you?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I'm a software engineer in quality. So quality assurance is basically the last line of defense. The best way you can think about it is like if you are visiting a website and somehow the website is not accessible, wink, wink, what happened today? No, just joking. And yeah, so I am the last line of defense where I'm supposed to check and make sure that everything that was in terms of development was accomplished acceptance criteria. I'm going to throw out a bunch of terms here. You might not understand it, but so all of this is industry standard. So acceptance criteria is what, in other words, the goal, the end goal that the company or the stakeholders want for a certain piece of development. And I'm in charge of making sure that all of it is met and that there are no defects, as we call it, bugs in the industry, and that there is a happy path for the user to accomplish the goal, as well as there are no blockers or anything that looks ugly and may discourage the user from proceeding the flow. On a day-to-day basis, it depends, like I have experience from startups to big corporations. At the moment, we got acquired by a big corporation, so it became more of a corporate feeling, but it depends on the cycle. We go through sprints, some cycles that are sprints that depend. Some companies do 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes monthly. In the current role, and every role I've held is a 2 week cadence where depending on the time is what I'm doing. And I'd like to emphasize the fact that even though I'm a quality assurance, there's a big difference between a tester. Quality assurance engineer is the person who ensures quality, but also creates automation and plans for test plans and anything around tests that are still part of the life cycle of development. So I'm still coding and I'm still creating software of internal software for the company. And I make sure that all this is up to standards, up to code, and what I mean code, I mean like the standards of the company and make sure that everything does what it's intended and it's defect free as well. But yeah, for just to make it simple, the first week of the cycle is testing all throughout, and the second week is automation and finishing up tasks for the goals to be accomplished and making reports.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like your day-to-day would change like week by week, really, like based off of like what
Yeah,
part of the or what I guess section of the project you're currently working on.
correctly. Yeah, and also the depends also on the process that we're following for the main goal for the company. There are times when I have to do investigations and certain development that doesn't exist that is new for even the corporation, and I just have to go and do it. So that's what I'm saying when I say that I'm not limited just to doing the test of other work, but rather also creating my own stuff.
Hmm. Got it. Okay. That's really helpful to know, just kind of that quality assurance, kind of that differentiator between like what quality assurance, what I would have thought it was versus like what it actually is. That's really
Yeah,
helpful.
very different.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Great. Jordan, what about you? What does your role typically look like? Like, what is your day to day?
So my role specifically is middleware is defined differently at each company and depending on the needs of the environment. So where I work specifically, middleware deals with everything that interacts with more than one business unit. So my day-to-day is sort of defined by what cross-functional systems that currently need work, what's currently in triage, and what needs to be developed in a certain cadence. So that's sort of the big picture of it. And on top of that, there's all the various middleware and integration pipelines. So that could be queues, could be API hooks, could be, simple file transfer if it's a more legacy system. Could be a really bit of anything that has to do with the transport and communications layer. A typical day, it really depends. But for me, the reality changes the most depending on if I'm on call or not. So if I'm not on call, it's what you'd imagine is pretty typical software development. Probably 30% meetings, 30% development, 30% review and discussion, somewhere around that ballpark. But when I'm on call for all of our critical cross-functional systems, the reality changes pretty much entirely to high stakes triage and root cause isolation, and trying to fix things as soon as they go down to avoid any downstream impact to our customers. Because in the energy sector that can be very disruptive. So we have multiple backups, multiple parallel environments, but on call pretty much comes on to just for the week when you do it, the 1 week out of the month, that becomes your reality, is dealing with these highly compliant living systems.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like when you're on call, you just kind of have to be ready to like spring into action. Like, oh, there's a fire, gotta go put that out. Okay, this is what's going on. Meetings gotta wait. Like, this has to be like top priority.
Yes, exactly. Once when you're on call, you get a much more we'll call it an active role in the managing of the ecosystem. Probably a little more hands-on than a typical software engineer would expect for the most part. And depending on the application, the patching cadence, it can happen very frequently, especially when we're dealing with compliance-based applications that have to be patched every month or every quarter. And there's a higher risk for things to break. So it really just depends on how it goes for the individual rotation.
Got it. Okay. And then which timeline would you say you prefer? Do you like being on call or do you like having that like regularity? Like, okay, I know what I'm walking into today, things like that.
It comes and it goes. On call is really nice when you get a few, we'll call it a few tried and true issues that, they're known issues, but they haven't been invested in getting fixed yet. So it's a quick fix, it's a quick close around, everyone's happy. But occasionally you get something at, 3 a.m. and it's a, 24-hour fix. And you're just sitting there with, someone from networking, someone from security, someone from the DB team, and, a business analyst, and you guys are just trying to crack down to the root of it. It can be time consuming, but it's very rewarding when it succeeds, It's not a little tiring depending on the application.
Wow, I had no idea that you would have to be up at 3 a.m. for something if something happens. That makes sense, like now that you're explaining it, but that's not something I would have thought of.
Yeah, for middleware specifically, and for us again, because middleware is the cross-functional team. Pretty much anytime anything breaks, there's middleware involved. So make sure that you know what your team supports in the big picture, because that'll structure how your long term looks, depending on how many applications they support.
Got it. Okay. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Timothy, what about you? Can you describe your current role and then what a typical day looks like for you?
Yeah, so I kind of have two different roles that I go between. So part of my job is being a IT support technician. So basically just kind of your basic help desk stuff, helping people with password resets, basic software troubleshooting, permissions, that kind of stuff, some hardware stuff as well. In that role, we collaborate with our like systems administrators and engineers, data, our LMS, Canvas team, basically, HR and other departments internally for things that are beyond our scope. And that's pretty much we just handle requests, phone calls, people coming in that need this help. Sometimes it's one-off requests, but it's usually the basic ones. In my role as junior developer, I kind of also deal with a lot of the Concordia's middleware. We have a lot of different integrations with third-party systems between our database and them, or between each other. So I'm kind of taking on those programming roles. And another big part of my job is being an understudy for our senior systems engineer, who's been basically the one guy who does everything, and that's not a good long-term strategy. Get the bus factor up from one, if you know what that term means. Um, so a lot of the stuff that I do is building out and investigating more ways to use integrations between those different platforms, and also our internal like scripts and processes. Sometimes I'll be given specific requirements for some projects that I'm working on, but oftentimes it's basically, here's what we have, here's the end result we want, figure out how to do it. So
Hmm.
it's a lot of figuring out stuff as it goes there.
Gotcha. Okay. And then since you're kind of in this like in between world, which one would you say you prefer? Do you like the IT tech support side? I feel like that one's more like customer service facing, or do you like the junior software engineer part?
The tech support is mostly customer service, yeah. So I mean, like it definitely helps to have a technical knowledge and programming experience. Helps you
Hmm.
have a better intuition for like software, that kind of stuff. But I definitely do more enjoy the developer stuff because it's programming. It's what I studied, so it's
Hmm.
and a lot more rewarding for those projects that I work on.
That's awesome. Great. Um, So moving on to my next question, you've all touched on it a little bit in your introductions, but I wanted to talk a little bit about like college prep, right? So I'm just curious what your major was when you were getting your undergraduate degree, and then how did it prepare you for your first job out of college? Some students graduate and are surprised that maybe their first job out of college isn't that like high paying, very high up there, like top paying quality service like or quality engineer, software engineer, anything like that. It's sometimes something that's not related. Like my first job was a receptionist at a company when I majored in like psychology. So very different paths can lead you to different things, but yeah, so just how did your major prepare you for your first job out of college? Jordan, did you want to start us?
Yeah, of course. So I think that Concordia specifically gave me a very, very, very strong foundation in, what you kind of break down to the fundamentals, your data structures, algorithms, core design principles, networking, operating, all the basic stuff that quote unquote, learn in college. I think it did a great job of preparing me for the fundamentals. But one of the things that it really, really helps with is learning how to think systematically and debug logically and actually go through the steps and break down a product or a project or an issue to simpler components and sort of step through that and think through it methodically and really just apply those principles. Because at the end of the day, everything is composed to some level of fundamentals. So complex problems can always be broken down. And I think that college in particular really prepares you for that, or at least a computer science degree, which is what I majored in, I feel very much prepared me for that. And looking back on it, pretty much everything that I was like, oh, I really wonder if I'm ever going to, just to throw like discrete math out there or something like that, or numerical analysis, some class that you're like, is this really going to help me? It probably will. Looking back on it, there's always some foundational, fundamental element that the class is there for. So it's one of the biggest things that it prepared me.
Nice. Yeah. I like how you said that it prepared you how to think methodically. Like that's maybe that's not what you think of when you think of computer science, but it's like, yeah, like you have to learn how to think. You have to kind of be able to adapt to different situations, different scenarios. It's not going to be a textbook problem that you're walking into work every day. It's going to be something different. Great. Juan, what about you? Can you tell us how your major prepared you for your first job?
Yeah, this is gonna be a very controversial one, but I don't think college prepared me that well for everything that I'm seeing. And bear with me, I don't mean that what they teach is not what you're gonna see, but I'm a big believer that if you will pay attention to what you really want to do, and if you put in what you get out, like I remember taking classes, and yes, my major was, well, first background, I went to a city college in New York City. It is not the most prestigious, and it's known for having lots of flaws, right? They're not going to teach you everything, but they do have a curriculum that covers, at the time that I went to school, covers whatever was expected from an engineer to know, right? But I agree with Jordan. There were certain things that like, really, am I gonna learn how to do certain things that are like mathematical equations that are so advanced that nobody will ever touch in their life? And I agree with him. Like you will have to put the thought process into it. You may not solve it, but you will have to let the computer solve it for you by the thought process. Now, that being said, I do agree with the fact that they teach you how to think. You will learn how to think through college, but everything that you do in college will not apply fully into the job. In a specific cases, I graduated from the college for software engineering, which was the school, like the major that I chose, but I ended up going into quality assurance. And I didn't go to quality assurance by choice. It was an option that was out there. And I think that I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. And there's a big entity out there that wants you to go through a path to learn certain lessons. And I want to emphasize that there is no opportunity that is bad when you want to succeed. I took that opportunity as a software engineering test. Basically, I was a tester. They they downgraded me to be a tester, but I didn't look at it down. I look at it as an opportunity, and I went in, and 3 weeks into it, my boss at the time said, "I don't know why you accepted this job, but I'm gonna upgrade you by pay and by title, and you're now a software engineering test for my company that doesn't exist." And they gave me a promotion 3 weeks into it. Um, at that time, I was an actual contractor, and they made me a full-time employee, gave me whatever package was for a software engineer, and they made me be the head of engineering for the lead, not the head, the lead of engineering for this specific initiative. And I just look at it back now, and I'm like, yeah, anyone else would be like, no, I'm not taking it because that's not what I went to school for. That's not what I wanted. It doesn't align with my goals. But there's not a single opportunity that comes granted with anything that you want, but rather what you make out of it. So back to the topic of what it is that this college prepare me, I certainly agree that the college prepare me for presentation, for being outspoken, for always questioning everything that you want. Like you don't have to accept what everybody else says. You always have to question everything. And that has been the approach that I take on everything. I always ask, but why, how, when, what, where? That is my mentality. Like, if you cannot answer these questions, we need to figure them out before we can proceed. And I think that's why I'm a quality assurance engineer and I'm great at it because I decided that this was what I knew and what I was good at. So, yeah, I'm happy where the choices I took and every opportunity I forged it myself. I didn't, yeah, that was the greatest thing, I guess.
That's really cool. It's like the your coursework and everything was able to teach you discernment. Like, okay, like if this isn't
Yeah,
reaching a certain level, like a certain threshold, why are we going to give it like our stamp of approval? It's kind of like your stamp of approval is gold and you're not going to put it on just anything. Like you're going to
right.
make sure that you've poked the holes yourself. You pass it over to someone else. Poke holes for me because I'm not putting this like out there for people like to consume without making sure that it's perfect almost
Right.
like.
Yeah. Yeah, very much.
Mhm. That's pretty cool. All right. Timothy, what about you?
So my first job out of college was full-time tech support here at Concordia.
Hmm.
And in terms of how my major prepared me for that, it wasn't the coursework at all really, at least directly because it's not a programming job. Um, but just like we've been hearing, like the analytical thinking, the ways of problem solving, of getting to solutions, isolating problems, that kind of stuff is fundamental to being a good tech support technician. Just figuring out like what the problem is and how to fix it. Um, and the problems that we ourselves aren't equipped to fix, we need to figure out what exactly is going on, why we can't fix it before we pass it off to another team. So that analytical thinking was a big way. And the other probably even bigger way that it helped prepare me for my first job was actually getting me the connection to get the job. It's not a coincidence that I work at Concordia, being a Concordia alum. It was kind of like I was a known quantity because I had worked as a student worker in the IT office before. And so when I graduated and there was an opening for a full-time position, they said, well, we could hire these dozens of candidates that are applying in this competitive market, or we could just hire the known quantity that we have. The student worker who is now an alum is qualified for the full-time position. So that was a very important way that it actually connected me to my current job.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that um doesn't get touched on too much. You know, it's that the whole purpose of like becoming an alumni is to hopefully have access to that network once you graduate and being able to come back. I know Concordia is pretty good at that. I'm an alumni. And plenty of us that work here, staff, faculty members, we all kind of gone through this like all the classes here and have found our way back or have reached back out and asked for support in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, it's a lot easier for a company to take a bargain on someone they already know versus going out of their way to try to test run another person or hire somebody that maybe they're not familiar with. Juan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to say something also. I think I agree with them. I did find I meant to say it, but I completely just spaced out. But so the one thing that I will say that everybody should not skip on or should not slip on or should not forget it and continue to practice every single day is networking. You will never know who you're gonna bump into when you're in the workforce that you might have seen in college and then you regret you never spoke to, you regret you never were friends with because leverage is leverage in the industry. If you know somebody and that person works somehow for Google and you ended up being not friendly with him because you just didn't want to and you want to be in tech, like you're gonna kick yourself in the behind thinking like, why didn't I talk to him? Because I have learned to understand that when you know somebody, you can get opportunities that not knowing anyone will not get you. So networking is a plus, plus, plus on my books. Like I talk to everybody, and Catherine, you know this. Like
Yep.
you and I work together. You know how I spoke to my own elbows. So yeah, I would say everybody just talk to everybody, be friendly, because you never know in the future who you're gonna be bumping into, and opportunities may show up.
Yeah. No, I had moved to a new state. Like I knew absolutely nobody, and I was in a completely different department from Juan, and he just made sure that I was had someone to eat lunch with. You know, like it was something that he didn't have to do, but it is here today. So yeah, um, yeah. So you guys are speaking about internships a little bit. That leads me to my next question is, was there a specific internship or maybe an extracurricular activity that helped you out the most or kind of put you in a position to start working right away when you graduated? Um, Timothy, you spoke to it a little bit, but did you want to touch on it a little bit more?
So, I think there's a couple different ways I could kind of interpret and answer that question, but on the kind of note of that student worker position that I did, like that's something that's available to, students. So, serving in that capacity as a student was an opportunity that I had during college, and I took advantage of that. And again, that was kind of inadvertently a form of networking that I had done, and that led to my career path. Another important thing I did was my senior project was like this um, kind of software group project with a teammate, and we kind of built this thing out. But we did it for a Concordia research study. It was something to basically generate reports to give out to study participants based on the data they collect. So did some networking with other Concordia faculty staff, spent some time really trying to solve these problems that were way above our head at first, but that was also important experience as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I like how you said it, like you networked inadvertently. Networking isn't always obvious. It sometimes it can be as easy as just like walking by someone in the hallway saying hello, turning in homework. That's networking. You're talking to your professors, things like that. It doesn't always have to be like, hi, nice to meet you. I need a job. Here's my elevator pitch. It doesn't always have to be that obvious in your face, kind of desperate. We'd rather it not be that way. So we want to try to make sure that networking is like as natural as possible, right? And that's a great way that you were able to do that. Yeah, Timothy, go ahead.
Yeah, and sorry, just to quickly add to that, you said extracurricular, and it's not really completely extracurricular because it was part of my studies here, but it was outside of my major. I was heavily involved in music,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that really strengthened my kind of people and social skills. And I had extensive touring experience with like really difficult tour schedules, a lot of concerts, interacting with different cultures, learning about how to engage with people,
Hmm.
which throughout the years has definitely helped me in a lot of ways, interacting with people.
Yeah. No, any job, you're gonna have to interact with people. Like it's not as easy as just like sitting here all day long, just like, there's just the computer screen in front of me. You're going to have to send emails. You're going to have to give presentations occasionally, just like have meetings with people. It's really a skill that doesn't get talked about enough. But yeah. Jordan, what about you? Was there a specific internship or an extracurricular activity that helped you prepare you for what was next?
Yeah, so it wasn't necessarily a formal internship, but funnily enough, like Timothy said, so I worked as a student worker for the music department, just doing like like helping,
Oh, more music.
the little event things that they do, just as a standard employee. And I had gotten to talking to one of the coordinators for the program, and they had mentioned that they were running into a last leg issue with some of the communications for outreach for the music department. And I was like, okay, cool, computer science major, let's see if we can put this to work. And over a few months or so, I helped develop a little application for them that helped them fix this issue of being able to communicate with people more efficiently for outreach. And although it wasn't a formal internship, it was a real world experience that I had to, build individual, despite being small at the time. It was a big learning experience for getting infrastructure going and standing up an application on my own for a field that I didn't really, I didn't really have any formal experience in communications or marketing or anything like that. So getting that experience for something a little bit more cross-functional, I think, today, but like they're saying, most of what I do today is cross-functional. It's working with non-functional users. As I'm sure that most.
Oh, I think we lost you. I can't hear you. I heard up until like with cross-functional users.
You hear me?
Yes.
So like they say, working with cross-functional users is something that happens on a day-to-day basis, day in, day out. So getting despite not being a formal internship, getting that experience early on, I think really helped my personal growth and my professional growth in being able to do stuff like that.
Yeah. No, so you said it was like a little experience. There is no such thing as little experience. All experience is experience. That's what I always just like tell everybody. I was so excited the first time I made a poster after I was trained properly. Like it's so rewarding to see that like you're able to apply it to something that maybe you weren't specifically trained in. Like I know that with software engineering or with just like computer science in general, you're trained on like specific programs that maybe Professor Tolman was like giving you like, okay, here's a problem, solve this, here's a problem, solve this, but you're able to apply it to music. That's not something that you would really think of like, oh, like this is probably going to be an assignment in my class tomorrow or something like that. It was something that you were able to kind of use what you learned, right? College prepped you to think methodically. This is how you're able to apply it. That's really cool.
Right. And I think that, kind of bringing attention to that is that, speaking well about your work is another thing that is important. Even in retrospect, the project might seem small, but like you said, it's really just all of these foundational experiences and these impactful experiences that kind of build up to making you a good, well-rounded engineer or developer or, analyst.
Yeah. You can't build a tower without a couple bricks. Like it's got to start from somewhere. So, yeah. All right. And Juan, what about you? I know you're really big on what did I learn outside of the classroom?
Yeah, yeah, you know me already. So I don't see things as internships. Hear me out. The way I see it is this. I've always been very curious. I've never stopped and said, "Oh, I gotta get an internship because that's gonna help me." It's like I think I just have been always curious about things. Um, I don't know what everybody else does if they say an internship meaning one, but I took four throughout college and I
Got it.
did side projects and I did like every moment I could, I just did something that will be on my resume. And let me elaborate. When I was going to college, I realized that I was going to a college that was in rank number one. I didn't go to an Ivy League college. I wasn't going to be the top student for the college because it just was not feasible. And so I thought to myself and I said, what can I do to make a difference in my career path where people are going to look at me and say, just another pass. They're going to look at me and say, wow, he did this. I'm interested, at least to get foot in the door for an interview. So the way I approached it was if it's something that will help me be rounded, I will learn it. And not necessarily for tech, because at the end of the day, you're meeting people with families, you're meeting people that are humans, you're meeting people that have hobbies. Whatever it is that interests you, there will be other people in the same org will be interested as well. Now let me backtrack a little more. Like I did an internship in web development. I did an internship in app development. I did an internship for a startup company that did virtual reality. And I did an internship for the last one of it was for software engineering, right? But I did all of these not with the mindset of finding a job, which is odd. I did it with the intent of saying, this is gonna look pretty in my resume anywhere I go, any interview I do. So, for instance, let me connect the dots, right? I did an internship with app development, which I basically did an app throughout the last semester and I published it. Connected dots to now, I am in a venture where independently from my job, I'm creating applications for a company. And that wouldn't be possible if I wasn't doing that heavy load when I was in college, right? I did a web development internship. I did web development while I was in college. I was working for people making websites for them as a side gig. And I didn't do it because so much because of the money. Yes, it did have an impact, but I did it more because I was able to put it on my resume and said, I built websites for XYZ, right? And just in general, like any opportunity you have to be curious, just do it. Another thing I can tell you is I now and throughout my 10 years of work, I realized that learning Linux is a plus. If you know Linux in a company, they will put you higher up than if you don't. And you know how I learned Linux? By creating a project for myself of an arcade system out of a Raspberry Pi. And people think like, oh, that is so random, but it's like, but the goal wasn't to learn Linux. The goal was to create a RetroPie that will make me play video games at home. But that led me to understand further that programming language or that command line language, I guess, to create things outside of that hobby. So to sum it all up, because I know I'm taking on quite a bit, is like if you have a thing for something, whether it's tech or not, explore it. Just go for it, learn it, so you can teach others in the future how you did it, and that can lead you also to more opportunities. There's no such thing as internships. It's just more experiences to put on your resume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, a trend that we're seeing a lot just in blogs that I read is people are starting to look at your resume less as like okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? It's more of a portfolio. So it's like really like, and with computer science, like with just how many different aspects there are in this industry, it's there's really just a wide net that you can cast, right? So there's different avenues within this industry in particular. This has been one of the most difficult ones for me to grapple with just because it's so, if you're going into this, you're probably going to pick a niche, but the more niches that you can develop, then like the more we can branch out your resume and things like that. I know that I really like how you mentioned that students, if they have interests in things, that's something that they can really like pour into, and we can put those side projects on a resume as well. I just met with a student who his big goal is he wants to get into video game design. And so we were talking through, Blizzard is right down the street. I'm like, hey, look, like here's like there's a whole process for how to apply for this internship. They open their internships for 1 month, and that 1 month they're gonna get just bombarded with application after application. So we got to make you stand out. What's the way to do that? And he just offhandedly said, well, I created this video game. It's just I'm not really proud of it yet. And I was like, I don't care. Don't care how proud of it you are. If you're able to do that, that's not something the typical person would do. Was it part of a class assignment? No, it wasn't. That just shows even more. That means that you're not doing just your class assignments. You're also just going off campus, diving into this a little bit more. He wasn't happy with how the graphics were, but I was like, but can it play? Can it work? Can you get from beginning to end? He's like, yeah, you can, but this is this. And it's like, you want to talk about that stuff. And him being able to explain it to me, someone that wasn't in this field, it really goes a long way. So like that's something that we try to practice as well. That's really cool. Yeah, so moving on to my next question. It's what is one soft skill or hidden skill that maybe you perform daily in your role, but it wasn't necessarily taught in the classroom? So I know we're really harping on this thing like that. It's like you learn a lot in your classroom, but I'm just trying to emphasize that your classroom, it builds the foundation for what it is that you're going to enter into, right? But each employer, each industry, each little niche that you have is going to have their own little way of training you. So maybe, Jordan, do you want to kick us off with that? If there was like a soft skill that you were able to take away from Concordia? Oh, I'm having trouble hearing you. Leave it to the middleware integration engineer.
Classic. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. I would say everyone's touched on it a little bit so far, but I would say that by far the biggest soft skill that is very helpful to develop and hone over time is just going to be, we'll call it cross-functional communication, technical communication, but really just being able to talk to someone who is not as much of an expert in your field or your application as you. Because there's pretty much almost never going to be a time other than when you're working with your direct peers or your manager or your lead where the people are going to have the exact same context and the exact same background on it as you. Even if you're an application person, there's a better chance than not that you're going to know the ins and out of the actual Linux platform and environment or any middleware or data pipelines or anything like that that go along with your application. And it's going to come on to you many times to communicate that to business process management or progress management or really anyone else from any of the other teams. And to be able to communicate that, other than just saying, oh, we wrote 1,000 lines, we have 100 bugs or, 50 Jira tickets open. Once we clear that, we'll be ready for phase 2. But actually being able to drill down to the meat and potatoes, as it were, and explain why this is taking so long or why it's going so fast, what other support you need from other teams, and just in general, what other people can do to facilitate your success, especially cross-functionally, is, I think, huge and very critical. And it's something that you can really learn in a classroom because a classroom, you're all in the same major typically for a computer science class. It's by design not a cross-functional environment. You're not working with branding professionals. You're not working with networking professionals. It's just not something that you'll learn that way. So it's something that you kind of have to go out of your way to learn how to do. And as everyone's touched about, all these networking opportunities are some of the best ways to do that. Talk to people who aren't necessarily in your field.
Mm-hmm. I like that you mentioned that, the cross-functional communication. I know that the computer science students and the engineering students specifically are asked to create like portfolios in their class of like the projects that they've accomplished and everything. And those are some of my favorite appointments when I'm sitting with students that are showing me their websites and they're like, oh, I built that myself through code. I'm like, okay, well, can you explain it to me? Because I'm not someone that would understand it. I'm not sitting in the classes with them. And it's actually just something I really like. Like when my husband had to learn Python for something, he's in biochemistry and he had to learn Python, and I really liked just looking over his shoulder because it's logic and it's like, no, I'm not trained in it, no, I don't like necessarily understand it, but I like the idea behind it, like the principle behind it. So I'm a good test subject, is just try explaining it to me because I may be able to guide you a little bit more. But yeah, so you were speaking on being able to speak technically as well as like, I guess like behaviorally, right? Like expressing your needs, expressing what you would need from other departments. During the interview process for some of these positions, have you found that there's a big difference between like the technical interview and like a behavioral interview, or are you seeing that they're typically combined a little bit?
Typically, so it depends on the exact role. I've noticed that for anything that typically has the word engineer in it, typically 2 or 3 stage, and they're going to be siloed pretty heavily. One will typically be just behavioral. Talk to me about your past. Tell me about your experiences working with this. How would you deal with a different stakeholder who disagrees with your view or your deliverable, the condition of your deliverable, something like that. And then oftentimes for the technical ones, they're just going to be technical. We get in, they pull up a pair programming application, depending on who the hirer is, and we'll go from there. Or they'll be like, okay, I want you to walk me through how you would get every permutation of a subset of characters or something like that, from like 9 letters or something like that. And they'll typically be siloed pretty heavily. And oftentimes there'll even be a cross-functional person interviewing you. So it might not be someone on your team. It'll be like a business process manager, just to see if you can actually communicate non-technically, depending on the role.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on that. Sorry, that was a selfish question of mine, but yeah. Yeah.
I can elaborate more on that. I mean, but
yeah, please.
Yeah. No, I agree with him. I think that I just want to furthermore, since this is more for the students. So the one thing that you have to think is you have to think outside the box. They're not asking you for the description of apples. They're not telling you, well, can you create this piece of software. They know you can because you went to school for it. What they're asking is, are you going to be a good match? Are you going to be conflictive? Are you going to be a listener? Are you going to be a good team member? Will you be able to bring value or are you going to bring liability? And it comes down to that. I've been in charge of hiring and I've been hired where they ask you these tricky questions. They're like, well, how would you react if your manager told you to do something, but you know it wasn't right and you didn't want to do it? And it's not, they're not asking you how do you fight your manager? They're asking you how do you behave in situations like this. So um, I agree with him in terms of the concept of knowing how to communicate because you will be put under the microscope when you're being interviewed and when you're working the first 6 months.
Got it. Okay. That's good to know. Like, so is it typical that there's a oh, what is the word? Not
Onboarding. They
temp
call that
on
onboarding period.
onboarding period. Okay. Got it. That's really helpful information. Well, Juan, since you were talking about that, do you want to mention any skills that are maybe like hidden that you kind of are like, oh, I this is something I use every day?
Yeah. So as a coworker and as a at some point manager appointee or a hiring manager appointee, I want to emphasize and tell everybody that don't take for granted English class and grammar class. You will be
Okay.
surprised the amount of applications where they use very abbreviated language to communicate for the onboarding questions or for not the onboarding for the review questions or for the interview questions where they don't use proper language, they don't use proper sentence structure, and they don't convey information properly. And that is your chance. That is completely a chance where it's like to the pile interview. And I think that if it was one, I wouldn't call it soft skill. That's a core skill actually. Like a
Okay.
core skill that you need to master is you have to make sure you understand that you are going to be very, very much tested everywhere. Like and your best behavior in terms of writing is just being accurate. Be respectful, be accurate, write proper, and be very much like follow the structure that is for like the old school. Because I know some people think like, well, we're not in 2020, I'm sorry, 2050, 60, sorry, 1960, 1970. We're now in
Yeah.
2026, right? But it's like, but if you really think about it, it's like the manager of the manager of the manager and the CEO are not 16-year-old. They're not 19-year-olds. And if they are, they're not, chances are they don't have 1,000 people under them. So they're with their exceptions, right? But so what I'm trying to say is like you're most likely going to be meeting people that are going to hire you that are not in your age group and they're not going to appreciate the type of grammar that you're putting into it. So yeah, and then I guess that's a core skill, and a soft skill will be again communications. Like learn
Mhm.
how to be a people's person, try to be friendly, don't don't assume things. Learn, ask, get to know people, so that way you get to understand where that's coming from.
Sorry, I'm writing that down. Don't assume things.
Yeah, don't assume. Yeah, and I'm very big because like sometimes when you assume people are mean, you're not really understanding why. You're just looking at the layer on top. You're not looking at the reason why they're being mean or why they might be mean. Might be that they're just being overworked or they just want somebody to bring value, not too much liability. I'm gonna keep bringing those terms back because at the end of the day, a corporation is a stakeholder group that want to make money. They're as much as they want to help for a cause, they also want to make money. So
Nice. Those are good things to keep in mind. All right, Timothy. We've talked about communication. We've talked about having good grammar, no Gen Z slang. What what skills do you think are really important for your role?
Now, that's an excellent segue to what I was going to say,
Mhm.
because while Gen Z slang is inappropriate in an interview, let's say, if you are Gen Z and if your coworkers are Gen Z, and if you have an office environment of Gen Z people who where the office culture is like Gen Z slang, I think
Mhm.
it's more than appropriate to kind of emulate that. What I was going to say is be socially flexible and adaptable. That's
Yeah.
definitely not something that is taught in your programming courses because we programmers are not known for our social skills. But uh, being able to adjust and adapt, and without like compromising your values, of course, but like adjust like how you interact with people, to the environment as appropriate. For example, the two different roles I have, I mean, there's the office culture that I have in the tech support office. There's the office culture that we have with our kind of like more administrative people in my development role. Those are different things, and they're both excellent cultures, but I have to be able to adjust between the two, kind of how best to reflect the working environment I'm in.
Yeah, I was gonna say um we're both in higher ed, so we have to be able to adapt to each new generation that is coming in. I've learned so many new words, is what I'll have to say. I would never bring them up with people that I work with, like staff, faculty members. But yeah, in order to like build that camaraderie and to build up that like culture where like we have student workers and we want to make sure that they're feeling supported by us, we have to have some adaptability, some sort of flexibility there so that they feel comfortable and safe with us as well.
Yes, and when you build out these relationships with your social skills and adaptability, you will build lasting professional relationships that will outlast your time just being a coworker with someone. They will remember you, and this is again back to networking, communication. These are the main important things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's really big. So I'm gonna move us on to the last question, and then I'll just tell a quick story so everybody has a little bit of time to think about it. But my final question for you three here is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to students who are currently trying to enter into the industry? Um, and I know I'm just beating a dead horse here, but I feel like networking, communication, the things that you guys have been able to speak on today are just super, super important. So Juan alluded to it earlier, but he was one of my first friends. Like when I moved out of Concordia, it was at my first position, my first job, and he was in our programming team, and I was at our front desk. And then from there, I've been able to take a lot of just what is like just career development opportunities just based off people I meet. I didn't know that when I met Juan that he was going to be someone that was going to be able to come back and help me talk to students and just kind of give me that bird's eye view of like, hey, look, I know you're not in this, but here's some information that you'll need. And I was able to pull on a couple people from my previous roles as well, just to come back and help support students, just tell me stories because really I'm a generalist. I can't know everything about every single major. So again, I just really appreciate you three coming here and being able to speak to your experiences as our new students are like getting ready to graduate, enter into the work field. But yeah, Jordan, did you want to start us off? What is your piece of advice? I know you were a Concordia alum, so maybe there's something you can let them know.
Maybe it seems obvious, but I think the biggest one is just be curious and always be learning. And your education doesn't stop when you get your degree or when you step out of the classroom. You're going to be learning your entire time on the job and for the rest of your life, and that really really matters in a workplace. And I think to kind of just give a more specific answer to that for computer science is, if you're building a side project, don't just build a side project, like a single Python file that you run locally and call it a day. Really be curious on how it would interact with the scalable system. Think of it as, obviously everyone likes to joke that everything today is a software as a service for sale, but, take that mentality and really see where your application and where your skills, how it'll connect to other things, how it'll connect to the bigger world, or how you would explain it to someone not in your field. And just, be curious for that, be hungry, as they say, and just try and continue learning from what you do. Don't just build a side project, build the ecosystem around it and learn from it. It's in a production environment, it's never going to work on the first time. So the best way to learn is just, break things on your own and lower stakes and get that confidence so you can go forward strongly.
That's great. I like that advice. Timothy, what about you?
I will continue beating the dead horse and say networking.
Yeah.
And my kind of, I don't know if you call it anecdote, but what I have to add is every single job I've had has been a result of connections I've made. So my role here as a support technician came from being a student worker, which in turn came from kind of knowing some people in the department, becoming a in addition to that, part-time junior developer came from doing some development stuff internally in tech support, the higher up seeing that and saying, hey, we could use a dev. Would you like to kind of transition your role? Even before that, I think it might have been in my bio that got sent out that I'm also a church music director. That's a recent change or recent addition to my life in the past couple months. Never thought I'd be a music director, but I once filled in for my church's music director who was elsewhere. And unbeknownst to me, another church's choir director came to attend that service. She liked what she saw. She got in touch with me and said, hey, we could use a music director. And she's someone I kind of knew outside of that, and I got the position. I was a student AV technician here at Concordia during my time. That came because I recorded something right before COVID hit for the handbell ensemble, sent it off to the music department faculty. They really liked what they saw. So when I was an incoming student the next year, they said, hey, would you like a job as a videographer because it's COVID and we can't perform? And I've had a bunch of other weird connections like that with people I've known, things I've done. Long story short, do things, be curious, build connections with people because that is how you can make it, not only in the career path that you're trying for, but also opportunities that will open to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for beating that dead horse. I really appreciate it. All right, Juan, bring us home. What is your piece of advice for 2026? Well, I guess 2027 graduates.
I think I'm going to take a different turn in this question, and I'm gonna talk about new things. I'm not saying I don't agree with them. I do. But they said it, and that is important. But I'm gonna bring it. I want to raise the bar. So when I graduated, everything was manual. Everything was like learn this, learn that, and you went to the workforce and you started doing and creating and nurturing this little code that we can agree that everybody has. 2026 is the AI age, and we have to accept the fact that AI exists and that AI is very much there. There's two things you can do. You can get into the workforce and let yourself be killed by AI by being obsolete, or you can be the master of AI and use it on a daily basis and be ahead of everybody else. What I mean by that is don't use AI as a shortcut. Use AI to enhance your skills and be the best at what you do. And the one thing I want to emphasize on is don't be a jack of all trades. Do one thing that you love, that you're really good at, because they're going to call you the expert of that plus more. Because if you know how to do everything, you're just going to be one of the generic people that know how to do it well. But if you're mastered at one thing and you know everything else, they're going to go to you because you have that one up. And how do you connect them both? Do not stop paying attention to the classes. Pay attention to the data structures. Pay attention to how loops work. Pay attention how the FIFO, LIFO structures are, because these are very important. You will see them every single day. Make sure you don't go out of bounds on your actual iterations. Jordan said something very important, like in the interview process, they're not trying to see if you know how to program. They're trying to see if your objects are going to be proper. They're trying to see if you're going to be doing object-oriented programming or you're going to be doing some, behavioral-driven code that is going to die within the next iteration. So that being said, try to pay attention, continue to sharpen your skills the most you can. And when you get there, utilize AI to bring you to the next level, because now you become the manager of your own self. You're going to be outputting so much more because you know what you're doing, not AI is telling you what it's doing. And the number one thing I'm going to say, since I'm touching AI, don't accept everything AI does. Audit. Part of my workflow on a regular daily basis is do this, do that, output this, output that. Last step, you guessed it, audit. Give me 5 reasons why this is accurate. Give me 5 different ways that I can test that this is accurate and nothing went off track. Give me the definition of all the goals were met in what we did. And that is how you master being an AI person as well as being a good programmer or a good data scientist. Don't sell yourself short. Continue learning. Every day is a learning. You woke up, you were able to get out of bed. This is an opportunity for you to learn one more thing. Never go to bed without learning one new thing. That's my goal. That's my motto. Every day, if I don't learn one thing, I feel very disappointed because I did nothing throughout the day.
I like that one new thing. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing up AI. I know that that's a really big topic that we have been kind of hovering around with Concordia for a little bit, but you're completely right. It's like, don't use it as like a form of like, all right, well, this is where we're headed. It's going to take this thing over. It's going to just like, it's kind of not like a candle can't be held to it, right? Rather use it to learn the process, learn the basics, because that's the whole point of coming and like earning your degree. Otherwise, AI would have done it already. Like, the whole point is that it can make mistakes. And I really like that your suggestion about like, hey, thank you for doing this for me, like talking to AI, right? So thank you for doing this for me. Now, how can I test it to make sure that you're correct? Like, like that audit process. Then it becomes an assistant versus a replacement. But yeah.
You will be surprised. I guarantee you right now, everybody go into your chat box, your AI chat box, and do that same sentence. Please give me 3 reasons why this is correct. I guarantee you, and I can bite my tongue because it is almost true that 90% of all your chats is going to say, you're right, this was not accurate. Let me go fill in the gaps. Because it is a thing.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up the questions I had for you all, but I appreciate you guys joining today, and I hope that you're able to walk away with some hope, for what computer science can do for you down the road, and 3 great connections. They were able to come and share our stories today. But yeah, I hope you all have a good rest of your day.